For decades, Michael Landon was seen as the perfect image of the all-American father. His role in Little House on the Prairie, Bonanza, and later Highway to Heaven painted him as a man of unwavering faith, family values, and gentle guidance. Millions admired him, putting their trust in the smile he showed on television screens, believing he lived exactly as he portrayed. But behind the carefully curated image was a life far more complicated, filled with secrets, struggles, and personal battles that Hollywood never revealed. His home, often described as the happiest in America, had an air of coldness and distance that few could understand. The laughter captured on set contrasted sharply with the silence in his private life, where family members often felt invisible and neglected. Michael Landon Jr., his son, has spent years reflecting on the truths he witnessed, sharing details that shed light on the man behind the roles. In interviews, he described his father as a complex figure, someone who struggled to reconcile personal desires, societal expectations, and the burden of fame. These revelations paint a picture of a man whose life was a constant performance, not only for audiences, but also for those closest to him. The warmth and charisma people associated with him on screen were often absent in the privacy of his home, replaced by tension, uncertainty, and emotional distance. While his public persona inspired and entertained millions, Michael Jr.'s accounts reveal a hidden narrative, showing how the pressures of Hollywood and the desire to maintain an image of perfection shaped both his father's choices and the family's experiences. Behind the smiling father and faithful figure lay a man wrestling with his identity, personal happiness, and impossible expectations of being a role model from the late 1970s onward. Landon's life became a series of carefully constructed appearances. On television, he was the embodiment of integrity, teaching lessons about morality, courage, and family bonds. Off camera, however, he navigated a different reality, often retreating into isolation and secrecy. Michael Jr. recalls numerous nights where his father returned home late, smelling of unfamiliar colognes, and left almost immediately after brief greetings, never truly engaging with his children. Birthdays, holidays, and simple family dinners passed without his presence or participation. While the public consumed stories of Landon's family life and praised him for his dedication, the reality inside the Beverly Hills mansion was markedly different. Michael Jr. shared vivid memories of waiting for his father, only to see him arrive hours late, offering a brief acknowledgement before retreating to private spaces, leaving behind a sense of emptiness that the young son could not understand at the time. These experiences shaped Michael Jr.'s understanding of his father, not merely as an absentee parent, but as someone who was living under constraints he did not fully reveal, a man caught between personal struggles and public expectations. Hollywood, with its focus on image and perception, often rewarded those who could perform seamlessly in public while masking internal conflicts, and Michael Landon exemplified this paradox. The contrast between the warm scene on screen and the emotional coldness at home created a duality that haunted the family, leaving a lasting impression on Michael Jr. As he matured. One of the most revealing aspects of Michael Landon's private life was his complex relationship with women. Michael Jr. disclosed in interviews that his father had never truly loved any woman in the conventional sense, including his mother. This revelation shocked many, especially considering the family-friendly roles he portrayed. Landon's relationships were often guided by necessity, image, and societal expectation rather than personal desire or emotional connection. When he married his second wife, Cindy Clerico, the marriage appeared to the public as a storybook romance, a fresh start, a symbol of redemption for America's favorite father. Behind the scenes, however, it was a strategic choice designed to maintain appearances and shield the reality of his personal struggles. Michael Jr. described witnessing moments that revealed the tension and distance in this marriage, including interactions where affection seemed performative rather than genuine. The media and fans, seeing only the public gestures and stage photographs, had no knowledge of the underlying strain, the missed opportunities for connection, and the loneliness that persisted despite the presence of another adult in the household. These experiences illustrate how fame and public perception can shape private decisions, often creating a life that is partially constructed to satisfy others' expectations, leaving true emotional fulfillment out of reach. Landon's struggles were not limited to relationships, but extended deeply into his own personal well-being. Reports from Michael Jr. and others indicate that his father relied heavily on alcohol and cigarettes, often using them as coping mechanisms for stress and isolation. Nights at his Malibu mansion were described as filled with jazz music, cigarette smoke, and the haze of alcohol, creating an environment both confusing and intimidating for those around him. Black deliveries arrived at the house frequently, handled discreetly, and were never fully explained, adding a sense of mystery and unease. Michael Jr. recalls moments where he discovered substances or objects that were never openly discussed, leaving him with a mix of curiosity, fear, and helplessness. These circumstances highlight the internal battles Landon faced, portraying a man who, despite outward success and fame, struggled privately with addiction and the consequences of a life lived partially in concealment. The combination of fame, personal expectation, and secretive behavior contributed to a complicated household dynamic, one in which children felt a distance from the father they revered publicly on the sets of shows, especially Little House on the Prairie. Landon's behavior revealed another side of his character. While he was capable of warmth, mentorship, and genuine humor, his moods could shift abruptly, influenced by his personal struggles and reliance on alcohol. Crew members recounted instances of him laughing heartily one moment and exploding in anger the next, creating a tense environment that required constant vigilance. Michael Jr. described feeling caught between admiration and fear, witnessing his father's brilliance as a performer and director, while also noting the volatility and unpredictability that accompanied it. The duality of Landon's presence, both nurturing and destructive, underscores the challenges of celebrity life, where the same person who embodies ideals on screen can struggle profoundly behind the scenes. The pressures of production, audience expectation, and personal demons created a delicate balancing act, which, in Landon's case, often leaned towards self-destruction, leaving those close to him to navigate the fallout. Despite the darkness, Michael Jr.'s reflections also emphasize compassion and understanding. He does not view his father as malicious or inherently evil. Rather, he acknowledges the impossible pressures and personal constraints Landon faced. From this perspective, Landon's actions, though sometimes hurtful, were rooted in survival, image preservation, and coping with a life that demanded continuous performance. Michael Jr. recalls discovering letters and diaries that shed light on his mother's awareness and silent endurance, illustrating a family navigating both love and secrecy in the shadow of fame. This nuanced view allows readers to see Landon not as a villain, but as a deeply flawed human being, struggling to maintain a dual existence in the public and private spheres. The story becomes not merely about scandal or betrayal, but about the cost of perfection, the sacrifices made for appearance, and the emotional distance that often results when image takes precedence over personal connection. Over time, the pressures and personal struggles took a visible toll on Landon's health and behavior. Michael Jr. recounted moments where his father appeared lost, haunted, and physically declining, yet still attempted to maintain the persona expected of him by fans, colleagues, and the media. These experiences highlight the fragility behind celebrity, showing that external success does not always correlate with internal happiness or fulfillment. The carefully constructed public image masked years of private suffering, creating a gap between perception and reality that would only be fully understood by those closest to him. Michael Jr.'s account, coming decades later, provides a rare glimpse into the complexity of this figure, offering insight into the emotional and psychological pressures that accompany fame and public adoration. Michael Landon's story, as revealed by his son, ultimately serves as a cautionary tale about the cost of living a life that prioritizes image over authenticity. Behind the smiles, laughter, and family-friendly television shows was a man who wrestled with loneliness, addiction, and the burden of societal expectation. His marriages, relationships, and personal choices reflect a struggle to navigate identity and desire while maintaining a public persona that often demanded perfection. For audiences, the revelations provide an opportunity to understand the human behind the icon, reminding us that fame can mask struggle, that images of perfection are often carefully constructed, and that even beloved figures wrestle with personal battles unseen by the public. Michael Jr.'s reflections close the narrative not with condemnation, but with empathy, illustrating the power of perspective, memory, and the enduring complexity of family relationships. Michael Landon's life demonstrates the stark contrast between Hollywood glamour and private reality. While millions of viewers saw him as a father figure, mentor, and moral compass, his personal existence was defined by secrecy, tension, and a longing that could never be satisfied publicly. Michael Jr. recalled the constant absence of his father from ordinary family life, Birthdays that went unnoticed, family dinners that were empty, and nights where he wanted the mansion alone, hearing the muffled sounds of a man who seemed almost a stranger. Landon's emotional distance was not necessarily a result of malice, but an impossible expectation he carried to be a perfect figure in every aspect of life, both on and off screen. His public image demanded consistency, charm, and unwavering warmth, leaving little room for personal vulnerability or imperfection. This double life, a polished public persona and a private man's struggle with identity and isolation, created a deep emotional gap for his children, especially Michael Jr., who grew up witnessing the disparity between the image the world adored and the father he barely knew. The story becomes even more complicated when examining Landon's marriages and personal relationships. Publicly, he married women who fit into the narrative of the family man, yet private accounts reveal that his decisions were often guided by necessity rather than desire. The marriage to Cindy Clerico, widely celebrated as a new chapter of happiness and love, was, according to Michael Jr., motivated by image protection rather than genuine emotional connection. In this light, the glamour and smiles that Hollywood portrayed were not entirely deceptive. They were protective shields masking a deeper, unresolved reality. The early 1980s marked a turning point in Landon's private life, as his internal struggles began to intersect with public perception more visibly. On set, he continued to perform brilliantly, but behind the camera, his volatility became more pronounced. Crew members and cast often described the uncertainty of working alongside him, never knowing if he would be cheerful and collaborative or angry and destructive. Michael Jr. recalled scenes in which his father's on-screen tenderness, often with young actors, was immediately followed by violent outbursts or explosive moods once the camera stopped rolling. A single misplaced light, a tiny wardrobe detail, or a change in dialogue could trigger reactions that ranged from shouting to breaking equipment. This unpredictability created a climate of fear and anxiety on the sets, forcing colleagues to walk on eggshells to avoid provoking an eruption. Michael Jr. recognized that this behavior was not inherently cruel, but symptomatic of a man under immense pressure, struggling with personal demons, alcohol dependency, and the impossibility of reconciling public admiration with private torment. These pressures were compounded by Hollywood's relentless demands for perfection, a culture in which stars were expected to maintain flawless appearances regardless of the chaos that might consume their personal lives. Alcohol and substance use became defining elements of Landon's later years, contributing to his increasing isolation. Michael Jr. described nights in Malibu filled with jazz music, cigarette smoke, and a haze of scotch, creating an environment both intoxicating and intimidating. Deliveries of mysterious packages arrived frequently, handled discreetly and without explanation, intensifying the sense of secrecy surrounding his father. On rare occasions, Michael Jr. would discover the contents, often finding items that hinted at deeper struggles and unusual habits. His father's reliance on these substances was a coping mechanism for the immense pressure he felt to maintain a flawless public image. The isolation within his own home mirrored the solitude he experienced emotionally, highlighting the paradox of a man adored by millions while privately struggling with loneliness, addiction, and fear of exposure. These revelations underscore the human cost of celebrity, showing that behind the public persona lies a complex, often troubled individual navigating personal demons. Michael Jr.'s perspective is invaluable here, offering readers a first-hand account of tension, heartbreak, and quiet resilience that marked his father's private life. That Landon's relationships with women further reveal the complexities of his emotional world. Despite two highly publicized marriages, Michael Jr. emphasized his father had never truly loved in the conventional sense. His choices were influenced more by necessity, image, and societal expectation than genuine romantic attachment. Cindy Clerico, his second wife, became a focal point for public admiration as Hollywood framed their relationship as a story of redemption. Behind the scenes, however, the marriage was strategic, a way to protect Landon's public persona and maintain appearances. Michael Jr. observed that interactions between his father and Cindy were often performative, meant for cameras and media, rather than born from authentic affection. The tension created by favoritism on set, coupled with Landon's personal volatility, further complicated relationships with colleagues and family members alike. Senior actresses began to avoid him, noting the difficulty of working alongside someone both tipsy and possessive, while young actors were caught between admiration and fear. These dynamics illustrate the complex interplay between personal life, public perception, and the pressures of maintaining celebrity status in Hollywood. The influence of fame on Michael Landon's parenting also left a lasting impact. Michael Jr. frequently felt overlooked and disconnected, despite living under the same roof as a father he admired. Birthdays, holidays, and special occasions passed without acknowledgement or presence, leaving a deep emotional imprint. These experiences highlight the challenges children face growing up in the shadow of fame, where public adoration does not equate to personal engagement. Landon's devotion to his career, though remarkable, often came at the expense of meaningful familial connection. Michael Jr. described witnessing moments of profound absence, where his father's attention and affection were entirely consumed by the demands of public life. This absence, coupled with the secrecy surrounding his father's personal habits and relationships, created a complicated emotional landscape for the children, shaping their understanding of love, trust, and parental presence. The professional achievements of Michael Landon, however, cannot be overlooked. His skill as an actor, director, and writer was extraordinary, and his impact on television remained significant. Shows like Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven left lasting cultural legacies, teaching lessons about morality, kindness, and perseverance. Yet, these achievements came with hidden costs. The intense pressure to succeed, coupled with the public's unwavering expectation of perfection, exacerbated his personal struggles. Michael Jr.'s accounts reveal how the demands of fame and artistic control sometimes contributed to destructive behavior, highlighting the dual nature of celebrity as both a source of influence and a driver of personal challenges. The tension between public success and private hardship underscores the complexity of Landon's life, reminding readers that admiration often conceals the difficulties behind the scene. As time went on, Landon's health began to deteriorate, compounded by years of substance use, emotional stress, and lifestyle challenges. Michael Jr. recalled vivid instances of his father appearing physically unwell, yet continuing to maintain his public image. Pale, hollow-eyed, and coughing persistently, Landon still engaged with fans, colleagues, and the media, demonstrating a commitment to his professional responsibilities even amid personal decline. These moments illustrate the paradoxical nature of celebrity life. While outward appearances may convey vitality, the inner reality can be fragile, fraught with unseen struggle. Michael Jr.'s reflections emphasize the emotional toll this dual existence exacted on both Landon and his family, highlighting the resilience required to navigate such pressures while maintaining a semblance of normalcy in public life. Hollywood's obsession with image and perfection further complicated Landon's personal choices. Decisions about relationships, public appearances, and professional engagements were frequently guided by considerations of perception rather than personal desire. Michael Jr.'s insights reveal the extent to which public expectations shaped his father's life, creating a persistent tension between authenticity and performance. The pressure to maintain an idealized image often left Landon feeling isolated, unable to share personal struggles or seek help openly. His reliance on alcohol and other coping mechanisms reflects the difficulty of navigating a world where vulnerability is often viewed as weakness. These experiences illuminate broader truths about celebrity culture, emphasizing the emotional costs associated with maintaining public favor while concealing private hardship. Despite these challenges, Michael Jr. emphasizes that understanding and compassion are key to viewing his father's life holistically. Landon was neither villain nor saint. He was a human being navigating impossible expectations, personal desires, and the consequences of fame. The complexity of his relationships, struggles with addiction, and emotional volatility are not excuses for harmful behavior, but provide critical context for understanding the man behind the public image. Michael Jr.'s reflections highlight the importance of empathy, recognizing that even admired figures are subject to the vulnerabilities, fears, and pressures inherent in human life. His accounts remind us that fame often masks profound struggles, and that understanding the whole person requires looking beyond appearances. Michael Landon's life in Hollywood was defined not only by talent, but by the immense pressures of celebrity. While the public adored him, the expectations placed on him were intense and relentless. The image of the perfect father, moral guide, and wholesome television icon became a heavy burden to carry. Michael Jr. frequently recalled watching his father navigate red carpet events, award ceremonies, and public appearances with a practiced smile that belied the chaos of his personal life. Every interaction, from interviews to charity appearances, required precise calibration. Every smile, laugh, or tear had to convey authenticity, even when it felt entirely performative. This constant performance created a cognitive and emotional strain, leaving Landon with little room to express his true feelings. For Michael Jr., witnessing his father in these situations highlighted a painful dichotomy. The man revered by millions on screen was often unreachable and emotionally absent in private. The public saw warmth, charm, and integrity, but the private reality was shaped by fear, stress, and the need to maintain a flawless image, revealing the human cost of fame. The era in which Landon worked compounded these pressures. Hollywood in the 1970s and 1980s was a world where perfection was demanded, privacy was scarce, and deviation from the expected persona could threaten a career. Landon's choices, including his marriage to Cindy Clerico, his on-set behavior, and his strict control over creative work, were often informed by these pressures. Michael Jr. recounted instances where minor setbacks on set could lead to explosive outbursts, not out of malice, but as a symptom of the tension between personal desire and professional expectation. Landon's meticulousness and insistence on perfection became both a strength and a source of isolation, alienating colleagues while solidifying the high standards that made his work memorable. The result was a paradox. A man celebrated for warmth and integrity, yet often feared and misunderstood by those who knew him best. Michael Landon's parenting style reflected the conflict of his life. While he performed the role of father on television, in private, Michael Jr. and his siblings often felt neglected, unseen, or emotionally unsupported. Birthdays, holidays, and family traditions passed without acknowledgement, leaving lasting scars. Michael Jr. described waiting for his father's return from late nights, hoping for attention, affection, or at least a small sign of recognition, only to be met with absence or emotional distance. The disconnect between Landon's public persona and his private behavior created confusion and heartbreak for his children. They were raised in a household where appearances mattered more than connection, where public image took precedence over emotional intimacy. This tension shaped Michael Jr.'s understanding of relationships, trust, and love, leaving him with a complex blend of admiration, resentment, and empathy toward his father. These experiences underscore a key truth about celebrity life. The cost of fame extends beyond the individual, impacting families in profound and lasting ways. The psychological impact of Landon's parenting was compounded by his unpredictable moods and substance use. Michael Jr. recounted times when his father could be warm, affectionate, and playful, only to transform into a distant, irritable, or angry figure in an instant. Alcohol often fueled these mood swings, creating an environment where children felt uncertain and unsafe. The tension and fear that permeated their home were a stark contrast to the joyful, wholesome images projected on screen. Michael Jr. reflected on how these experiences forced him to mature quickly, learning to navigate complex emotional landscapes while maintaining composure in a household where love was inconsistent. The struggle to reconcile admiration for his father's talent with disappointment in his personal choices became a defining element of Michael Jr.'s formative years. Alcohol and substance use played a central role in Michael Landon's later life, affecting both his personal relationships and professional conduct. Michael Jr. described the nights in Malibu where jazz music, cigarette smoke, and the scent of scotch filled the mansion, creating an environment simultaneously alluring and intimidating. Deliveries of mysterious packages and late-night visitors became commonplace, reinforcing the secrecy and isolation surrounding his father's private life. These behaviors were coping mechanisms, allowing Landon to manage the immense pressure of his public persona while grappling with personal dissatisfaction and unresolved emotional conflict. Michael Jr.'s accounts revealed a complex interplay between addiction, fame, and emotional strain, illustrating how the demands of celebrity can exacerbate private struggles. Substance use also influenced Landon's behavior on set, creating a climate of uncertainty for cast and crew. Michael Jr. recounted times when his father arrived to film with a drink in hand, the smell of alcohol noticeable to anyone nearby. While he maintained professionalism and often delivered brilliant performances, his moods could shift unpredictably, leading to tension and fear among colleagues. These experiences reveal the duality of Landon's life, a man admired for talent, charisma, and moral guidance, yet battling private demons that complicated personal and professional relationships. Landon's marriages provide further insight into the challenges he faced reconciling private desire with public expectation. Michael Jr. emphasized that his father never truly loved in conventional sense, with choices guided by necessity and image management rather than emotion. His marriage to Cindy Clerico, widely celebrated as a romantic and redemptive chapter, was, in reality, a strategic move to maintain public favor and protect the carefully curated persona of the wholesome father figure. Michael Jr. observed that interactions between his father and Cindy were often performative, meant for cameras rather than genuine affection, reflecting the broader tension between authenticity and public perception that defined much of Landon's life. The dynamic on set, with favoritism shown towards Cindy, further complicated relationships with colleagues, creating jealousy, resentment, and unease. These anecdotes underscore the emotional cost of maintaining a flawless public image while navigating complex personal relationships. Despite these personal struggles, Michael Landon's professional legacy remains extraordinary. His work on Little House on the Prairie, Bonanza, and Highway to Heaven shaped television history, conveying moral lessons and cultural values that resonated with millions. Yet the behind-the-scenes reality, Michael Jr.'s accounts of volatile moods, isolation, and personal turmoil, reveals the human cost of sustaining such a legacy. Landon's talent, discipline, and creativity were undeniable, but they came at the expense of personal well-being and intimate family connection. Michael Jr. emphasized that understanding Landon's life requires recognizing both his brilliance and his vulnerability, acknowledging the pressures that shaped his behavior without excusing the pain inflicted on those closest to him. The contrast between public reception and private reality offers important lessons about celebrity culture. Audiences often see only the polished performances, smiling faces, and moral,